Welcome to the Tracing Layer series. This is the 4-section series. In this particular section, we are going to trace this cardinal and then do a good bit of freehand too. There is one other section of an ornamental lamppost. We'll be pretty much just tracing only, but this is for those who want to take advantage of the tracing layer, but then also do some freehand if they wish to. In this particular example, what we're going to do is we're going to retouch it first. And again, there was a whole section just on retouching. So what I will do is explain how I'm going to retouch this photo and do that in a speed retouch. And then we'll lay out how we're going to set everything up. I have some layers here now set up, but we will change those a little bit once we're done retouching this, and then I will set everything up as a tracing layer and what will be influenced and what will not be influenced, but we will do that after we retouch this picture. And what I want to do is just the same thing as in the section of retouch. I want to actually retouch the photo to make it better as far as either aesthetics or composition. And of course, that's the artist's choice as to how they want to rearrange or change things and what they think looks best from their original photograph. But now in this particular one, this right here kind of really bothers me. And in photography, we would call that a UFO, an unidentified foreground object. And what I mean by that is when something is out of the depth of field of the subject and it starts to get as big or even bigger than the subject, but it's unidentifiable. It's so soft that yes, it's a vine, but is it helping the composition or is it hurting the composition? So in my opinion now, I think it would be better without it and just have a nondescript background there. So I'm going to eliminate that. And then if you'll even notice that this is the unretouched photo, but in this particular situation, this vine comes down and just stops dead right behind it and almost looks natural, like it almost even wants to go right off the page. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually just take it right off the edge, and what I will do is cut out a section in here and then move it down here and then paste it over this right here, and then just eliminate a little bit of this right in here, and then that will be it. Now with this snow, it's also an eye grabber. We could do that one of two different ways. We could either just retouch it out right away and have no problem with that, or if we repaint the background, we are going to do this particular background by hand, and then that way we'll do it freehand and then color it in, and then we could either repaint over that snow or retouch it out. Again, that would be the choice of the artist. Now for this particular retouch, I'm going to just go ahead and do it, and then what we'll do is go through the speed retouch of that, and then we'll pick up after it's done, and then setting up our layers, and I will definitely describe each and everything I'm going to do, and then we will pretty much do the most painting in speed painting, because I will have some time in this one, because I'm going to actually do all the feathers by hand. Now there are brushes out there that you could duplicate fur and feathers and textures, but they start to tend to look a little bit alike. And for me, I'm kind of a traditionalist, and I still actually prefer to do literally one stroke at a time, because if you look, a lot of these, they're individual spaces. Their spaces are random, their lengths are random, and then also even sometimes their angles are random. So I would actually prefer to do them one at a time, and that way I could just get a better feel of just the real fuzzy fur-like feathers and how they would do it. Now again, here, one last time we'll zoom in. This is all soft in here, and this is already out of focus. But what we will do is we'll actually paint that in by hand and redo that and make it sharp again. Same thing with the tail. But we'll get into all of that once we retouch it. So let's go ahead and retouch, and then we will start laying everything out for the tracing layer. Okay, now that we finished up the retouch, I just went ahead and added just this little piece here that I cut out here. I went ahead and got rid of the snow and just cloned it out. You could have painted over that or retouched it out. Artist choice, of course. But now that the retouch is done, we'll go over how we set up our layers. Now, you could use as many or as little layers as you want. I actually work in a traditional way from the background to the foreground. So anything that's in front of something else, I will keep it a separate layer and then paint the heavier, thick oil brush strokes over what I've already painted, and just to build up the layers that way. You could even work on one layer and paint right up to something if you want to, if that's the way you choose to paint. But I just try to mimic a traditional painting. And this layer system, I'll explain everything to you here, that this is the original photo. Now, being that it hasn't been retouched, we will replace that one with these two combined down here. But I like to keep the original on top as to the final photograph that we'll be working from for two different reasons. We're going to make it the tracing layer, and then also I could either easily click it on and click it off just to actually refresh my memory. If I want to redo any kind of detail work later on, it'll be the very top layer. But the bottom two layers here, we're going to combine these. And what we will do is combine these two right now, and then we will actually call that Cardinal Guide. And you will see why here in a minute. And then what I want to do is, I always use black as my default just to show the photographs. And I'm going to change that to white, which I think should be right there. And then that will be it. And then you'll see why that too in a few seconds. And then what I want to do is actually duplicate this layer. And then I'm going to move it up to the top because we have to replace this one. And we can leave this one here. What we'll do is we'll call this one original. And that was before it was retouched. And then I'll go down here and change this one to the Cardinal tracing layer. And that is the one that we will be using as the tracing layer. And the reason why is this is going to be the full color picture we will be actually pulling our colors from. So if I make that the tracing layer now, then all of these buttons here, these dots, are the influenced layers. In other words, whatever layer I'm working on, if there is a dot on here, then I will actually be pulling my colors out of this tracing layer. Now, this tracing layer doesn't even need to be on, so we are going to turn it off, and then that's it. So now what we're seeing is the actual Cardinal guide layer. But what I want to do with it is it's just going to be a guide of where to paint. So what I will actually do is take it down to about 50%. And then that will be it. And then once I start painting over this, even though it's 50%, I want it to so I could barely see what I'm painting. And this way, it's just a guide, just to show me where I have to paint and what I am painting, the difference between the foot, the bird, the vine, and what have you. But what I will actually be doing is pulling my colors from this layer, which is the full color photograph. And this way I can also turn this off and on again to see if I want to look at any kind of detail or anything that I want to use. Now keep in mind throughout this painting, I am even going to bring up other photographs for the eye and a couple maybe other different details here and there. Because working from a photograph, it's just a source of a reference. Because you paint like a photographic style or a realistic style, doesn't mean you're just duplicating over a photograph. There are many things you could change and adjust and actually improve on a photograph. Because for me, working with cameras for quite some time, there are quite a bit of limitations that cameras have compared to being able to design something from a creative point of view where there are no limitations whatsoever. Now, with that said, we're going to turn this off. We're going to down here, and then being that this is our guide, what we will do is first, I have my traditional palette here of the Winsor Newton colors. I'm going to go in and open up. I will get a 25 color palette, and what I'll do is I'll just open up the exact same photo, and when I open it up, it will create me a custom color palette of the picture here, mainly the vine and the cardinal itself, and then the background colors of the grays and the snows. And then what I could do now is actually, I will just give you an example of how this works. And I'll just go to the background and we'll erase it back out. But what the dot will mean is I will be pulling colors out of here, and I'm going to do this in oils. So I'll go to my oils. I'll just use that filbert just to start us with. And these settings look pretty good here. And I'll even zoom in a little bit just to see what we're doing here better. And anytime I touch down and pull, I'm going to be grabbing that color. Now, my sample area is set at 5x5. So that's the amount of pixels I'll be pulling out of as an average. So you could adjust it as fine-tuned or as large as you want, up to 5x5. But now if I go to the red areas, then I'm going to start picking those out. And when I start doing this, I am going to follow the patterns of the bird. I just don't want to randomly be taking colors down, or I'll be destroying the pattern that is the bird itself. So what I want to do in this particular case, so I'm going to kind of do this fairly detailed and realistic. I'm going to follow the patterns of the feathers themselves, and then that will give me a nice base coat to work with. Now keep in mind, once we keep on doing this, we can even consider this then a finished product. If you want to paint a little wee bit looser, then you could either go into a blending brush or even just change your settings up here and then start blending these colors together. But then once you even have your colors down, then you could even turn off the actual influence layer itself and then start working just with the colors you already have, and you won't be grabbing new colors constantly. You'll just be working with the colors you have, and you could blend them in a little bit or soften them up. But now if I turn it off and the background I'm going to do freehand, then that means I can actually use what colors I want. And then no matter what color it is, that is the color that will be going down. I will not be taking it from this particular photo right here anymore. It will just be freehand, and I will be able to choose what colors I want. And that I may even add some colors later as to what all colors this palette will have. But with that said, I could go down here and actually eliminate all that. And then now we would be ready to start. And again, I may start combining some of these layers, changing some of these. Later on with the detail 1 and 2, I may not need all of these layers. I just built them just to give you an idea how to set up a layer structure. You may not need all these layers, but what I will actually do though, then once I start going to the freehand, then I will turn these off and then just use freehand of choosing my own colors to work with and refine the bird and the vine and what have you from there. But what we'll do is do the background first, and then we will paint it in. And what we can actually do is paint it right over the vine, and then just to kind of right up over it, so the edge. So that way, when I go to paint my vine, it will be overlapping the background enough. But when we do that, we could handle that a couple of different ways. I could even go back to the background layer and turn down the opacity so then I could still see the original picture again, or I could even just turn it off and know that my background is done the way I would want it. That you could choose to do however you want or whatever works best for you. But with all of that said, let's just dive right into the background, and we are going to freehand it out with just these colors of grays here, and we'll get started on that, and then we'll go right into the bird. And then once I start freehanding, then I may actually just stop and just give you an update of what we're doing, or go on from there. We'll see how it goes. But we have a good bit to do with this guy, and we'll give it a start. So let's get started. Okay, I'm just roughing in the background. What I'll do is just lay down some different colors and then blend them together to get that nice airbrush effect. Next, we'll be coming up with the tail, just roughing in the colors. The tracing layer system is an excellent way to lay down your preliminary colors. You're not spending time going back and forth to the color palettes. You're actually just getting them right from the tracing layer photograph. This is a real time saver, actually, just to build your scumble coats and also your base painting. Now I'm just going back in and starting the patterns of the feathers, but keep in mind I'm definitely going to work with the exact patterns. I'm not just going to randomly grab any color. What I want to do is start building how I'm going to start painting in the details later on. This is just as important as the finish layers later on when I start working in the details. Now just working with the head, the crest, and now working down into the chest. Just trying to get rid of any straight edges so they're nice and soft looking, blending one color to another. And then also this will be, again, the base coat with several more layers of feathers and colors going over it, just to build a thickness and just depth to the feathers themselves. Now starting to work in with the vines, just starting to add the preliminary details, and also blocking in, and also just pretty much also trying to shape it in the cylindrical shape or the round shape or whatever shape it may be, to start building your shapes also as you shade in the colors. Blending the colors on the wings. I'm now just putting in the last couple details and just layers that I'm going to work with in this particular speed painting section. And now we'll take a break and discuss what we're doing so far. Okay, just a quick update here. This is what I was talking about before, that when we do the background, we can actually just paint right over. And say, for example, I actually turn off the grapevine, and then also detail number 1, I had some things there too when I changed how this branch looks, and a couple other things I just changed, and I actually just made them up as I went. But when I take those things out too, then what it'll be is actually just back to our Cardinal guide. And if I turn down the background to just say 50, then this is where you can work if you want to also. And then I could still see the entire vine, and then just more or less go back over it and pull out the colors. And this way I know where the edges are. And also, I also will know where the snow is. Because keep in mind, if I start grabbing that snow, then I will be using pure white to do the strokes of the grapevine. And I don't know if I'd want that. So if I do put snow in this particular picture, I think I would just wait until the very end and then freehand it in, rather than trying to put the very top snow on the vines before they're complete, number 1, and then number 2, as also just pulling those real subtle colors out of the whites, and then maybe even some subtle blues or grays of the shading of the snow. And there's such small areas that I think I would just wait until I was completely finished, and then put some on its own layer in the sky and on the grapevine. And I like to use individual layers like that, just so I could change my mind, change the placing of the snow, change the amounts of the snow, or then even just go back in and adjust the opacity of the entire snow layer if I want it to look a little bit more transparent. But let's dive back into the speed painting, and we'll see where we end up here shortly. as I go, I'm still refining all the shapes and values, starting to work in some of the feather details, just to start blocking it in. They may take several coats, several layers. Basically, I actually just work back and forth from light to dark, and slowly get to the point where I want them to be. Because I will also often just put it at the fit to the size of the screen, and then just look at every now and then with a fresh look to see what bothers me, if anything. If not, then I just move on. And then what I'll do is keep on doing the details of the wings. But I think what is most important is with digital, you have so many options. You're really not stonewalled into any final outcome. You could always change things, renew things, redo things, and then as long as you especially keep them in layers, that'll give you the options to go back and change things or rearrange things later. It's nice to have options when you're spending a lot of time on a piece. Some folks work with just a few layers. That's fine too. But for me, I actually do it for compositional reasons, just to give me options later to rearrange stuff. Okay, time for a quick update, and I'll just try and go through this real quickly. Let me get my pointer here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on the eye, but what I wanted to do is make it a little bit more livelier than the actual original. And here's the original, and it's just kind of like a little bit mottled and a little bit confusing because of the way it is and the detail it has. So what I did was dug up another photo of a different cardinal, but I got to be careful when I start combining pictures that this one is obviously in bright sunlight and this one will not be, so I cannot definitely have the catch light. But then also, just as a quick point of reference, I also loaded this one up, and this is a glass button. I use glass buttons for icons for different things, but my point is just how it has the glow on the bottom. And to actually mimic or just render glass, there is going to have to be some values and changes and gradations involved to make it look like that. Now this one has these two catch lights here are from artificial lights to give it that glass look. So I obviously don't have any artificial lights involved in my eye, so I got to be careful with that too. But now with all that said, that will be just what I use just to piece the eye together. And then I want to add some complexity to the vine, because right now the actual painting, it's well on its way, and I can start to get some details and what have you involved. But what I want to do is actually start adding a little wee bit more like pieces hanging off, or just some more splits and different things happening. Of these, from these two pictures, will be my reference and guide to just to be able to add a little wee bit more just interest to this particular piece of vine, so it looks more like a grapevine versus just some kind of a branch from a tree, and that will help determine what it is. And then also later I can easily go back in and work on my background. Since it is just its own layer and it's behind everything else, I will just add some darker spots. And then again, as I said before, I will add the snow on its own layer so I can control where they're at and how much diffused they will be, and then create the different layers of snow of some of the ones that are going to be bold and white in the foreground, and then go off to a blur, a real soft white spot of those that will be in the background. And then also I added this layer here as a glaze layer, and that is right in here. When I start working on all these little fine feathers, I'm a lot of times using the same color just by going to town, but if I want to keep my bird still looking round, if I use the exact same color, it's going to start flattening out. So what I want to do is actually tone down some of these, and then once I get closer to being done, what I will do is actually tone them down to the point where then I will also control even the opacity, that if they're toned down a little bit too much, then I will lighten them up. But without the glaze, they're going to be flat. And if I want to keep my bird looking roundish, then I might have to go back in and start shading it as if it was a cylinder and a rounded cylinder. With all that said, let's go back and get some more done, and we'll see how this male Cardinal turns out. Okay, just working on the eye again and just giving it that glass spherical look will help give it depth, so some of the colors look like they are floating above the eye, because the eye will have a glassy look in real life. Just putting in some of the feather patterns and then just watching very carefully. It probably is worth noting that when I work, I am lucky enough to have a 3-monitor system. And when I do all these paintings, I have my reference also set up on one of the other monitors, and then just draw from it. And every now and then I'll stop and look, and just to see where I'm at and to make sure I'm doing what I need to be doing, actually, and just building it up in layers and stages. The tail, what I'm doing now, is called the rachis, or just a shaft of the feathers. And if you'll notice, they are on specific sides of the feathers as the tail fans out, because it is important with anatomical accuracy is what I strive for. And sometimes you can't pick that up in a photograph, that you may need several to work from to get your feather patterns down and what you're actually doing exactly. Building up some of the shaggy bark and then going back and forth to the finer feathers, and then just scumbling in, roughing in where I might put some of the just the shaggy bark hanging off. I got to be careful so I don't make it look too shaggy, because that usually is only the more mature, thicker grapevines. And this one will be fairly thinner, only because of the size of the bird will dictate what the scale of everything else is. Scumbling in just some of the final things, and then just roughing in the background. We'll take a break and talk about it. Okay, time for a quick update. Let me grab my pointer here. And I went ahead and just started some of the background just to take a break from the vine and the bird. I may do a little wee bit more to the bird and a little bit more to the vine, just to actually bring some of this out in here, and even put a lot more just cracks and crevices in, because of the way the vine splits as it grows. I can't put too much ragged edges on it because it's a smaller vine, and the smaller vines don't get real shaggy like a full-size vine does, the bigger, thicker pieces, and that would be dictated by the size of the bird. So for that reason, I have to be careful what all I do and not make it look too thick too quick. And then what I'll do next is then just start putting in some of the snowflakes, the out of focus ones, and then some piled up on some of the vine here, and then maybe a few small pieces here and there on the bird, just like the original is right here. And then what I will actually also do is keep the snow all on its own layers, just so I could either move them around, erase them, change them. Keep in mind, you could even do something digitally speaking. If there wasn't so many involved, you could even do 1 or 2 of them, 3 or 4 of them, and then copy paste them. But I don't really want 400 layers over here of transformed snow. So I'd rather just do them quite literally one at a time, and then slowly diffuse each one and randomize my size through the brush up here, and then also just keep them still on their own layer, just so I could still rearrange their location and or opacity, things of that nature. And then I'm not, how would you say, just solid as to where they are. It'll give me options to be able to move them around a little bit for the sake of composition, so none of them bother me in particular as to, again, I want it just as an after effect, and not to take away the attention to right here to the bird's face. With that said, we will dive into some more, and we're winding down now, so it won't be too long at all that this will be done, and that will be it. Okay, just starting to lay in some of the snow. Again, I may put these on different layers just to give me the options of changing things around, erasing them. And I'm not, how would you say, again, making any kind of final decisions of anything I do. It just gives me the options to change things later. If I don't like something, then I actually would not have to blend it out or paint over it or anything. I would actually just be able to just erase it out. I added a little bit more darker background. I think it was needed just to give it more of a deeper, darker winter look, and then just still fine-tuning the grapevine itself for more complexity. And it all adds up in the layers that I use, and then also shadowing the feathers and making it look round. Okay, that ends the speed painting, and thus concludes all we're going to do on this particular piece. Just a couple of quick notes, and then we'll wrap it up. When you photograph your own pictures, it is a very big advantage because you actually do know what's going on at that particular time you're taking the picture. And one thing I do remember is that it's a very cold day, and with the dry snow, the snow is fairly fine, and you could tell that by the proportions of a bird compared to it, because these cardinals obviously have a designated specific size, and when you compare the snowflakes to your eye, then it will dictate how big the snow is. Being that we photographed this bird with a strong telephoto, then the depth of field was very shallow. But now, with that said, that it was a cold day with dry snow, what the birds were actually doing, because I work out of a blind for these particular types of photographs, is they will often just sit there and kind of relax, for no choice of better words, that what they will do is also then alternate their feet, and they'll curl up their toes and tuck them in underneath their feathers just to quite literally warm them up. And that is why I added this little wee just shading right here, and it'll kind of make it look like this little tuft of feathers is sticking out a little bit more. And then it'll also help explain why the bird only has 1 foot. But now, with that said, if I wanted to have a wet snow look, then I would obviously have to have the snow melting, or actually have water running down and have some kind of a color changes here, and then maybe even give a couple of hints of water droplets or what have you running down around the vine itself. But with the added pieces here, here's one interesting thing I noticed, that if I turn on my tracing layer, this is the photograph with the paintings. And oddly enough, they actually don't look too bad even mixed in with the photograph itself. So at least I kind of know I was on the right track when I was putting them in. And then that way, if I turn that off, then this is just the painting, of course. And then one other couple of things I would like to show you is the eye itself. Without that glass look eye, this is what I would have. And it's okay, it's somewhat detailed, it's somewhat the correct shape, and we had good photos to go by, but it is very flat looking. And now that I added the three-dimensional look to it, I think it does improve the eye quite a bit and gives it more life, so to speak. And that's a time where you have brighter colors that you want to jump out at you, and you want them to appear as if they were floating above everything else. But then in other times you may want, like what this is right in here, what's called a lost and found, where the colors of the vine start to blend in with the colors of the bird. And what that will do is create a three-dimensional movement, so you could go and travel within the painting and not just back and forth and that's it. Whereas if I have my snow starting to blend into the vine, but then also blend into the background sky, then that's where that will also just blend the vine in and make a three-dimensional movement also. But with the snow and everything else pretty much as is, I actually want to show you one last thing right here. Since the big ones are the closer snow in front of the bird, I really didn't like this one here. It kind of bothered me. So what I would actually do is just go back down to my snow layer 1, grab my eraser, and then just take that one out completely. And then I think I would like that better. And then for one last little explanation we could do, I will actually move this layer up here, this layer up here, and then now we could combine all of our layers. Since we are considered done with this painting, we'll merge them all down, and then we know that that's the Cardinal. But then now what we could do is actually turn these two on. So what we actually did was, here is our original photo, and then we retouched it, and we got this, and then now we painted over it through the tracing layer system and got this. And with that said, that will be the end of this particular section. Thank you very much for watching all the way through. Until next time we see you in the studio, see you later. Thank you.